Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Twin Peaks The Return Part 7. Full spoilers for the episode, as always. Yes, once again, I have notes. I have pages of notes.
I do as well. Mine are digitized this week.
Oh.
I'm like the sheriff's office. I'm getting with the times.
I don't know if you're going to be as quite as advanced as the sheriff's office. I don't think you have a secret monitor that pops out of
No,
nowhere.
I wish I did. That's one of my notes in all caps is, holy crap, there's a monitor that lifts. I was stumped for words. I was like, I want one of those.
And it had a secret switch as well, because it doesn't look like there's a switch for
No, it's a
something like that.
little log that you just pull up, and it's like, oh my god, a monitor's come up. This is amazing.
It's a proper Batman thing.
I think every police department should have that, because then they can look at the person that they're talking to. But then, oh, I need a computer. Right, all right, I'll lift that up. It's genius. Everyone should have it.
Aye. I like how the whole thing is basically a product placement for Skype, yet for us it was like, oh, look at this, the fancy coming up out the desk, oh, I want the Switch.
I do, I want one of those.
But no,
I have no use for that, but I want it anyway.
So we're gonna get into it. Got lots of my notes. We are just over a third of the way through. What's interesting is we do have a week break coming up. Not next week. It's after 9, I think. It's the July 4th weekend. That weekend doesn't have an episode. So I think it's after episode 8 or 9, there's a week off.
After 8.
It's after 8. So we got one more then a week off.
Yeah.
Right. I'm saying it now. I think Cooper's going to wake up just at the end of that episode. And then they're going to make us wait 2 weeks for...
It depends on how much, when they were planning the production. And when they were planning when they were going to schedule these episodes, did they know that was going to be where we're having a week off? Because if so, then I'd say yeah, definitely that's what they're going to do. But it could just be coincidence and completely unplanned.
Yeah, but what if they didn't know, right?
But they started it on the right week to time it like that.
Well, I was going to say, what if they didn't know? Then they got when Showtime wanted to slot it, and then they went, let's put 3 and 4 out together as well, and that way it lines up.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because putting 3 and 4 out, 1 and 2 make a lot of sense. A lot of shows do the 1 and 2 double to start things off. But 3 and 4 as well.
And also 1 and 2 felt a lot more connected than 3 and 4 did. Like 3 and 4 felt like you could have aired them separately, no problem.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but
we might be onto something there.
I don't know, just pure speculation. Maybe it's just cruel thinking on my part that they want to give us that cliffhanger and then be like, nah, 2 weeks for this one. Come back then. That's going to be a painful Sunday, because this is very much Twin Peaks is the highlight of my week right now. It's like, it's Twin Peaks night. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's the best part of the week. But let's get into it then. Enough of this dilly-dallying. Quick scene at the start with Jerry and Ben via phone.
It feels so strange hearing their names that way around. I know you say it that way around because that is how it is in the scene.
Yeah, we see Jerry first. Yeah, we see Jerry first, then we see Ben, which is why I've written them down, Jerry, then Ben. But maybe that's just a good way of making sure we're not talking about ice cream. Jerry and Ben.
Yeah, no mistaking it then.
No mistakes. But yeah, Jerry's high and lost in the woods and says his car's been stolen, or he can't find his car.
No, he specifically says someone stole his car, which I think is interesting, due to later things.
Yeah, he says someone stole his car. Interesting though, the tense he says it in, I'm not sure if it's just been stolen, like he's been in the woods, he's went back to get his car and it's not there, or if it happened like days ago and now he's just like standing about in the woods because he's high and he's blurting it out.
Yeah, it could be, because he says someone stole his car and that he doesn't know where he is. But it's very strange. But then again, this is Jerry.
Yeah, I don't feel like you have to mention it's strange when we're talking about Twin Peaks. So I feel at the end of every scene you could just go, very strange.
You could, but this felt particularly odd as a way to open the episode.
Yeah, well, that's fair. That's fair. And that said, the car you're probably thinking of, though, does appear to have another owner. Possibly. If what you're thinking about is where I think you're thinking about.
Right, okay.
But we'll get to that. So that was basically the scene, and Ben was just kind of... This is the first time I've seen Ben not Jerry, but this is the first time I've seen Ben since the first episode, so it's been a little while. But yeah, so Ben's we actually had a lot of scenes at the start of this episode that were back to back that were all in Twin Peaks, which felt a little bit unique because we haven't really had that so far. There's been a lot of, in South Dakota, then we've been in Vegas a lot with Doogie, or Cooper as Doogie, and so on, and the prison and stuff. But we had a scene with Hawk and Sheriff Truman, Frank Truman specifically, and they confirmed it's like, no, this is Laura's diary pages, and not only did they confirm that's what it was, he picked it up and he read the relevant part that,
and it was exactly what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was the exact thing we were excited about. It was the talk of the dream with Annie in it, saying that Cooper was trapped in the lodge.
Sometimes when things give you exactly what you think it's going to be, it can be disappointing. But this time it's like, no, I didn't want anything else. This is exactly what it had to be.
Well, do you know what I like about it is, because Hawk's like, well, if the good Cooper is trapped in the lodge, then the Cooper that came out that night with Harry and Doc Hayward is not a good Cooper. Like, he's putting it together, and it's kind of like, oh, yes, piece it together.
So close.
Do it for us, please. But no, them sort of, and Sheriff is like asking, so did anyone else see him? Because he disappeared shortly after. Did anyone else see him? He's like, well, the Doc did, but that's about it. And he says he's going to go and talk to Harry and like see what he thinks about all this. But that doesn't go very well because he phones Harry and it just kind of like, oh, you're too sick. It sounds like things are getting worse. He's either been moved to like a more intensive ward or something like that. It's all very vague because we only get like his half of the phone call, and he avoids doing that cheesy TV thing where he repeats everything the other person says so that we know what's being said.
Yeah, you don't need to. You get it from one side if it's done well enough.
Yeah, the context is fine. Again, we can't be too accurate with details. We just know he's getting worse, and because of that, he decides, all right, I'm not going to bring him into it. That's just too much stress.
I feel like that's almost going to be a mistake later on. Like,
possibly,
you should have done. Also very interesting, we're still missing one page from the diary.
You're right, yeah, we have 3 of 4 pages. And the other things here is we were speculating who hid them here. They actually immediately jumped to a different option. They jumped to Leland. And Hawk was speculating, Leland must have found... Because one of the other parts of the diary mentioned that Laura seemed to figure out that it wasn't just Bob. Because obviously we've seen Fire Walk With Me that she finds out that it's her father. It's like a vessel for Bob. And this gets Hawk thinking, he came by many a time. We were here. He was in for questioning on Jacques Renault's murder, and he speculated that's when he hid them. Maybe he thought, they're going to frisk me, they're going to search me, kind of thing, and that's why he hid them. Which holds up well enough.
Yeah, it's plausible.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so we have a scene with Andy, actually, before we get to the next Frank stuff. Andy's actually out investigating, presumably, the hit and run of the child from last episode, because he's at the location where this truck is.
Yeah. And
he's talking to someone who we don't know, some dude with a beard, who seems to be the owner of the truck. He confirms that is indeed his truck, but he's very fidgety, he's very nervous, almost as if he knows someone who doesn't want him talking is watching him.
Yeah, and he says, yes, it's his truck, but he wasn't driving. And he keeps saying, we can't talk here because they'll know.
Yes, they'll know. And obviously, the two obvious options here for they is, one, it's just, it's Richard Horne, and it's the other criminals involved, perhaps that's they. Or is he talking about owls?
Yeah.
That's what my mind jumped to.
I agree. I'm more inclined to think it's just...
the criminal element.
Yeah, because that seems the obvious choice.
It does.
Then, like I said, this is Twin Peaks. It's strange. The obvious choice is not always the one that it is.
Yeah, and Andy, bless his soul, is a bit gullible and goes along with this. Not to say that another police officer or detective wouldn't maybe pick up that he's scared and would suggest, okay, we'll talk later. But with Andy, I get the feeling that he's just, yeah, okay, I'll meet you later.
Yeah.
I'll meet you half 4. Yeah, okay.
4:30 at the side of the road somewhere.
Yeah, up in the trees, up in the mountain.
There's no owls up there.
Full of owls. Well, that's what proves that maybe it's not the owls that he's worried about. He's not concerned about the owls. He's concerned
Alternatively, maybe it is the owls that he's worried about. I mean, not to jump ahead too much, but the guy doesn't show, so maybe he's like, nah, there's owls up there.
I'll talk more about that when we get to it.
Yeah.
Other thoughts. But yeah, so we have Doc Hayward, Frank's, and this is where he presses his little lever, and up comes the monitor. After he's a little bit on the phone first, where he's like, "Oh, do you have Skype?" And it does feel like a bit like a commercial for Skype. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, "Do you have Skype?" "Oh, wash your hands." Like, "Oh, I use Skype all the time. I diagnose people. I don't even have to leave my chair." And he's like, "What's your handle, Doc? I'll call you."
To be fair, it does genuinely feel like old people discussing technology.
It does. No, it feels genuine. Yes.
Yeah, like, because I think when old people discuss technology, like, not all old people obviously, but the ones who are, generally not tech savvy, it almost does feel like an advert, because that's a lot of their experience with technology is seeing it on, advertising.
They have to explain it to each other.
Yeah.
This is another actually sad appearance, because the actor who plays Doc Hayward died. He died earlier this year, back in January, February. It was just before Miguel Ferrer died, actually. Because I remember cracking a little joke that worrying about who was next, because it was just after we started doing the original season. He passed away, and then Miguel Ferrer passed away, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, how many of these actors are going to pass away since we started doing this?
Yeah, it was happening a lot, like when we were doing the Alien movies.
As well, yeah, because John Hurt passed away, then Bill Paxton passed away. Yeah, it's almost a curse. I feel like I want to stop reviewing things just to stop killing people.
Yeah, I want to be safe.
But no, so it was nice to see that they'd filmed something with him, much like the Log Lady. But at the same time, kind of sad, because one, I know he's passed away, but unlike Miguel Ferreira, who is fairly active in this show, he's been in a lot of episodes. He's walking around. Both the Log Lady, and to a similar extent here. He's very inactive. You can tell, okay, they maybe went with a Skype call, because it means he can just film sitting in a chair. There's nothing else to it.
Yeah, it felt like it was so he could be comfortable in his own home still, rather than have to get him up to a set.
Yeah. I mean, it looked like he was outside, but yeah, probably just outside his own house kind of thing, yeah. And Dude's old. I mean, Dude, cause obviously he was already like an older man in the original show, so he's quite up there in the age now. But no, it was nice to see him. And even though he had a beard and he looked, he's got a proper old man thing going for him, I could still. It was when I spoke, I could sort of hear in his voice, as much as it was a bit more craggly and a little bit more broken up. I could definitely hear him in there, so that was nice. But this was a very interesting conversation, because he basically asked about Cooper, about bringing him back from the lodge. And by the way, just this whole conversation from the previous scene with Hawk and in this scene, there was just something very exciting about them actually talking about that night and talking about the end of season 2, because obviously we ended in that big cliffhanger. So them actually bringing it up and discussing what happened, I thought was just exciting in and of itself. But then,
I was gonna say, I just think it's interesting that obviously Frank was obviously not part of that show. So he's kind of a surrogate for any new viewers. Like it's like, okay, here's the cliff notes of what you need to know. If just for some reason you're jumping in now, even though we're only explaining this in part 7, first 6, tough shit.
Well, I think what works with that is he sort of asked him to clarify things. Like, he knows about a lot of it. He's heard a lot of it probably from his brother. Obviously, he's maybe been working here for a long time as well. He's heard all these stories, but that's why he's confirming things. Like, and he disappeared shortly after. Like, he's confirming details, but you buy it because he wasn't actually here at the time to experience it.
You buy that such an event was almost like local legend.
Yeah. So the doc says that he doesn't remember what he had for breakfast that morning, but he remembers that night. Just to sort of again clearly put it firmly in your head. This was an important event. This was something that one does not forget. But interesting stuff though. He talks about taking him to the hospital, and he caught him like an hour after they put him in the hospital. He caught him sort of up and around, kind of escaping, as it were, making a jailbreak. And he reminisces about him looking at him and it being kind of weird and mysterious. And he maybe theorised at the time, because he was in intensive care, that he was going to visit Audrey. So this is the first time Audrey's been mentioned in the show. And we find out that she was in a coma. Now, he does say past tense, which makes me think it's not a long coma where she's still lying in a hospital bed somewhere. It sounds like, no, she was in a coma for a recovery and got up.
It could have been a while. Like,
it could have been.
It could, for all we know, it could still have been 5 years, and that would have still been 20 years of her being active since.
Yeah, sure. It could have been a week. It could have been 5 years, could have been 10 years, could have been 3 days, for all we know.
But it implies it's not recent.
Yes, it implies that it's certainly not a currently active thing.
Yeah.
And that is interesting. Now, what I think is interesting about that speculation is that he could be wrong. It could just be that he was getting up, or maybe he was going to see Annie, who we've still not spoken about. And what's interesting is because we've had Norma, and we even see Norma again in this episode. I mean, she doesn't really have a scene per se, but we do see her. I think it's interesting that if we do hear more about Annie, it might be from her perspective, because it is her sister, after all.
Yeah, we don't really even know if she's okay, or I mean, we don't even know if she's alive at this point.
We really don't.
I'm speculating that she is, due to if she had died, I think that would have been brought up here.
Yeah,
this feels like it would have been a detail to go over in this case file.
But I do wonder. I am worried though that Doppelkoop did go and see Audrey.
If he did, what did he tell her? Because obviously, you know, there's the whole thing. People in comas, some of them can, you know, they can still hear everything.
Yeah.
And if she was in a coma and he thought he was safe, what did he say to her? What does she know? I'm
a bit more worried than that. There's a theory going online. I don't know if you've seen this one.
I've not looked at pretty much any theories at all.
Annoyingly, this kind of holds up for a bit of evidence for me. So, you know how Richard Horne's like a real dickhead?
Sure.
I know his name's Richard and I call him a dickhead. I don't even mean that, but I have noticed that I have made a very bad pun. I apologise. But so he's awful, and obviously his name's Horne. His name's Horne, and we said, oh, it's a bit of shit if that turns out to be Audrey's kid, because I feel like she wouldn't like she's better than that. She's tougher than that to let this little shit grow up like this. And we said, oh, maybe it's Jerry's son. But the one way it would work, I think, would be if the father was someone awful. And I'm a little bit worried, and there's a theory going around online that perhaps Doppelkoop is the father, and perhaps the conception was not consensual. Yeah,
I can see it. Timeline kind of lines up to his age.
Timeline lines up, and the reason why this works for me thematically, if to go down this route, it's very dark and it's very depressing, and I'll feel bad for Audrey if it's the case, but the reason why it works thematically, the one thing Cooper didn't do, because he was a good person, was he said, no, you're 18, I'm a member of the FBI, I can't do this, I respect you, we can be friends, but I can't do that. He was a noble stand-up gentleman, and I wouldn't have even blamed him, but he stood his line, he was a moral person.
Yeah.
The idea that Doppelkoop, the first thing he did when he got out and he was evil, was wetting...
it's the idea of perverting all of Cooper's morals.
Exactly. Well, I mean, even if it was a case of he tricked her and it was consensual, or if it wasn't, either way, well, obviously one's more evil than the other, but they're both sadistic. They're both downright sinister.
Well, that's it. It could have been consensual just because we know Audrey was into him in general anyway.
At least, well... It still wouldn't be technically consensual because it's still tricking her into thinking
consensual
it's him.
In the sense that she did agree.
She was tricked.
Under false pretenses.
False pretenses,
but she, from her perspective at the time, it was consensual.
Yeah. And here's the bit of evidence that I've got to back this up. Again, and this doesn't necessarily prove anything, but I think it's maybe symbolic. The first time we ever saw Richard was in the bar. Right?
Yeah.
And he grabbed that girl. He grabbed her the same way that Doppelkoop grabbed the girl in episode 2 in the bed, if you recall. Sort of round the throat.
I see it.
Yeah, and he held her sort of up to him the same way. Now, I'm not saying that the way you grab someone in an intimidating fashion runs in the family, but I just think in terms of being symbolic and
it was an interesting choice to direct it that way.
Yeah.
Because that had to have been a conscious choice to tell them to do it in that specific manner, both of them.
Exactly.
I mean, I think it would almost be interesting to see it go down that route, because it kind of raises the nature versus nurture sort of stuff then. I think that could be an interesting way of looking at it. Because you can kind of contrast that with him versus, like, you know, Andy and Lucy's kid. Well, I just mean in terms of having the new generation and seeing how they're raised versus who the parents are.
Oh, sure, yeah. If it is Dick's kid and Andy's...
Yeah.
But still, he's been a father, regardless, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just blood that makes you a parent, it's the actual parenting.
Yeah.
No, I get you. So yeah, I thought that was very, very, very interesting scene. As much as it was a simple scene of just two people on Skype, a lot of really cool little tidbits that got my mind going came from it. So then we cut to South Dakota. We cut to the police station with a detective, with Constance, the forensic specialist, and Lieutenant Knox from I believe the CIA. I'm assuming CIA just because that's what Major Briggs was from, but she's from the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And she's there to talk about the fingerprints, and she is shocked to find that it wasn't just prints that they found on a crime scene, it was prints that came from an actual body. And of course they show her the beheaded body. Very interesting facts come from this. One, the body that they've got there is in the late 40s, which is the age that he would have been in the original show, and at the time of his actual death. Two, he is actually, like, the forensic says that he has only been dead for since they
5 or
found
6
him.
days,
Yeah, so from just before they found him, as if that was a fresh crime scene sort of body kind of thing, not someone who's been wrapped in plastic for the last 30 years kind of thing. So very interesting. And obviously we know the lodges, timey-wimey, the fact that Annie went into Laura's dream in the past. Like, we know there's definitely weird things going on in that sense. Certainly though, this might have been the creepiest scene in the episode, because once Lieutenant Knox finds all this out, she goes back out into the hall and she phones Colonel Davis. I want to say I was trying to think of his rank. It's definitely Davis.
I think it was Colonel,
because they named him after the actor who played Briggs. So I knew his name. I was trying to think of his rank. Ernie Hudson. She phones Ernie Hudson and tells him the information, and he's like, "Okay, I'm going to make that call." What I thought was interesting is we assumed that call. I mean, maybe it still was to the FBI, but we thought it might go straight to Gordon. Perhaps maybe it went to Denise, because he goes to make that call, but then we cut to Gordon and we cut to their stuff. Quite soon after this, and they don't even hear about it yet. Yeah. So certainly it wasn't direct to them, if it was indeed to the FBI. But no, as she's on the phone, we see a figure coming. And do you know what I love about it? I love that at first it is just so far away, and he's just so out of focus that it's almost, this could just be an extra walking past in the background, but then it's slowly coming towards the camera.
And then the music comes in, the creepy theme.
Yeah. And what I love is that she turns and looks in that direction, and she turns around and she looks kind of worried, but it's played like I'm not sure if she's seen him. Like, could she physically see him walking down the hall, or was she just like, she's so wrapped up in her conversation and she's worried about what they're talking about? You know, was it just like, you know, when you're on the phone, you're just sort of glancing around because you got nothing to look at?
Yeah, I think that might be like more like, I don't want anyone overhearing this that shouldn't be. Because
exactly, yeah.
Obviously she goes in after and tells them no one else can see this body. And, you know, she's very clear, like, oh, I want this under control, like, this is our thing. So I think it's more just, I don't want anyone to know how strange this really is.
Yeah, it's the what I've written down, I'm referring to him, at least from now, as the charcoal man, because he's sort of covered in soot and he looks burned, if you will. But yeah, so he's walking down, and she comes back in, and she's like, yeah, this case is probably getting taken away from you guys soon. This is, you know, higher up the food chain, as it were.
Yeah.
But again, after she finishes talking to him, the camera pans over, and he walks past the door. He's very much paying attention to what's going on here.
That's it. You just watch him walk past. Doesn't say anything. Doesn't do anything. No one interacts with him. No one even acknowledges him. I
don't think they can see him. I do want to point out, though, is that in the music, it did sound like there was a hum, like an electrical hum.
Yeah, that was there.
And the soundtrack, and I think that's obviously very interesting. We've been associating that with a lot of the lodge stuff. Both times he's appeared, it has been in some way related to this case, because in the previously it was in the jail cell with Bill Hastings, who was arrested for the murder at this apartment where they found this body, where they found Briggs, and then again Briggs's body, him again.
Yeah, it's very much to do with this, whatever his purpose is.
What that is at this point, I have no idea. I can't even.
Not enough to go on yet.
I can't even begin. All right, so next up, we have indeed been cut to the FBI. We cut to Gordon and Albert. Albert comes in after Gordon's having a little
small
whistle.
Sound design touch I loved here.
Oh, go on.
The knock on the door from Albert is extremely loud, and then Gordon, he obviously heard it really loud as well. And he turns his hearing device down. I love that we got it from his perspective.
Yeah, it's a nice touch. He comes in, basically just informs him that Diane told him to go F off. And it's a very simple scene. It's just basically just, alright, it's your turn to go. You have to go and speak to her, Gordon. He's like, alright, you'll come with me. And I just love this moment because he says, "Say please," and Gordon acts like he couldn't hear him because
he does his thing. He goes, "What?"
Hearing issues, and he's like, "You heard me," in a regular, soft-spoken voice. "You heard me." And he's like, "Please, cut." Yeah. Perfect.
So effective.
Perfect. I love it. I love that Albert knows his shit. He knows that he's playing dumb.
I love Albert. You when Albert was first introduced in the original, he was just this dick. He was like, "Why is he here? He's just been an antagonist, just for the sake of it."
Oh, he's great.
But he's really grown.
Do you know what I love as well? I love that he's still walking about. Not in the office, obviously, but later on when we see him at the prison, he's still walking about with that metal briefcase with his stuff in it. It's the exact same type of case. He's not changed a bit. But yeah, so they go and see Diane at her house. I want to point out that not only in this scene, but throughout the entire episode, Diane is wearing red.
Yeah.
I thought that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, very notable. I think it'll be a case of, maybe she's the path back for Cooper.
Yeah, like if real Cooper sees her, is that maybe something that helps trigger him? Or maybe possibly Audrey. We've speculated that as well before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's wearing red. We introduced this great running joke where she likes to tell people F you, followed by their name. I'm only pointing that out because my biggest laugh of this episode came a little bit later, and it's related to this joke.
Yeah. I like it as well that it's just if the first time she says it, she doesn't put the name on it, and it's like, that's fine, that's just her. But then when she puts the name after her, I was like, see, it's personal now.
Oh, you want the personal treatment? You get it too.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Of course, they ask for coffee, and she plays tough to get with the coffee. But
I love how she goes, "Oh, got no coffee or cigarettes." She says while holding a mug of coffee and smoking a cigarette.
But they mention, obviously they sit down. They mention he's in lockup, and I thought her reaction to this, and I'll talk about this more when we actually get to her scene with him. I've got some theories, but she says "good" when she hears this. He's in lockup. Good. And the other thing I want to point out in this scene is Gordon, when he's trying to convince her, says, "This involves something that you know about, and that's enough that needs to be said about that."
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting.
I'm not sure what he's talking about. Is this a previous case they're talking about? One of his Blue Rose cases that Cooper was also involved in?
See, that was my first thought, but then the fact that he seems unwilling to mention it, even in front of Albert, I'm not entirely sure it is.
So, unlike usual, this show actually had lots of scenes that followed on from one straight into the other, which was weird.
It was weird, wasn't it?
It's not weird than anything else. It's weird in this because I'm just not used to it in this.
Yeah.
But we went from Gordon's office to Diane's house, and then we went to Diane's house to them on the plane to South Dakota, and so Tammy's on the plane as well, and she brings the fingerprint stuff she was looking at to the attention of the others, and Albert notices like a problem with it where technically it's right, but for some reason this finger, this one,
ring finger,
your ring finger, that's like, it looks right, but he notices something that says that they've flipped it to make it match. It was actually the wrong way round.
Yeah, almost like it was a mirror image.
Yeah, but
a reverse Cooper, perhaps.
But some would say he's the reverse. What I thought was really interesting though was Gordon's whole bit about that being the spiritual finger, because he mentions the backwards word. If you remember, we talked about how he said "werv," which is very backwards, because he said "very werv. Good to see you again, old friend." And he makes Tammy hold out her fingers, and he sort of counts it across, and it's 10 words, and it matches her fingers. It's like, this is the spiritual finger. So he's like, well, that means something. The fact that the spiritual word that matches that finger was the one that was wrong. I mean, he sounds like a crazy man in most circumstances, but given that I know he's right, it's like, okay.
Yeah,
I'll accept it, but jump into some far-fetched things there, Gordon. But no, but he is right after all. So yeah. Also, that was interesting that Diane isn't part of the conversation. She's like further down the plane, but she is paying attention. Like, she's definitely invested in everything they're saying. She's listening in on all of it
and looking rather concerned.
Yeah. The show Tammy a photo of Doppelkoop. They've got one known photo of him of the past 25 years, and he's wearing this fancy white suit in front of this villa that he owns, and he looks like he's out of the 80s, even though it's a relatively recent photo because it looks like present day Doppelkoop,
Yeah.
but it just looks like it's like taken out of Miami Vice or something like that. He's looking very dapper. That's actually the word I've written down. He looks very dapper.
I mean, I have no reason to dispute that. The use of that word, it's a pretty solid description.
So we get to the prison, and there's a little bit of setup before she goes in, before Diane goes in to see Cooper, Doppelcooper. And this is where we had the joke that I liked a lot, where Tammy sort of jumps in at one point and says, "Oh, we're very grateful for you coming and doing this." Diane just stops, and they all stop moving because they're all walking down the prison hallway, and they all just stop. And she turns around and says, "What's your name again?" It's like, "Tammy." Pause. F you, Tammy. Oh, I legitimately laughed out loud when.
Do you know what?
That line
I would have almost appreciated seeing like Gordon and Albert smile a little bit, going, she's one of us now.
Yeah, that would have been fair. But no, so she goes in to see Doppelcooper, and again, much like when the other scene him in the prison in episode 4, he's got the low voice through the mic. There's a sort of shutter that goes up and down, so that comes up and it reveals him. Yeah. And throughout the entire scene, Diane is looking very uncomfortable with what she's seeing. She looks very concerned, almost hysterical at certain points.
Yeah,
when she responds to him, and some key points here is she repeatedly asks him, "When did we last see each other?" That's like a key thing she keeps asking, and he says, "At our house," and that he'll always remember that night. To which she responds that she will also always remember that night.
Yeah, she says, "Same for me. I'll never forget it." And then in the same sentence, "Who are you?" And
that's just kind of piggying onto the Audrey theory here, because I've watched this twice, right? I as with the previous episodes, I've gotten 2 viewings of this, and the first time I read it incorrectly. I think I read it incorrectly, where I assumed this last time they met was before he became Doppelkoop. Like, it was before Cooper went to Twin Peaks, and it was like the last time they met before that.
But was my assumption too.
On a rewatch, on a second viewing, I am convinced this was post Twin Peaks. I am convinced that Doppelcooper, in perhaps the same way that he perverted the relationship with Audrey and even the tape recorder, everything that made Cooper Cooper, I am convinced that Doppelcooper went to see Diane after this, because the way she responds to everything in this conversation, the way she responds to "I will never forget that night," like it's a horrible memory, like something bad happened.
I think this perspective is backed up by her conversation with Gordon afterwards.
Absolutely, yeah. It was just the way it was on the second viewing when I was watching her, the way she actually responded and the way she said each of her lines. This was like a horrific night because he says "I'll never forget that night" as if he's taunting her. Like it's a good memory for him. He's taunting her, and she responds like, "Yeah, I'll never forget it either." That to me, it's like, no, this is a horrific night in my memory. I'm never forgetting that. And I'm wondering, is this why she like says "good" earlier on when they say, "Oh, he's locked up in a prison"?
Yeah, like he's done something to hurt her.
I think she's known ever since then that it wasn't really him, and maybe like she wasn't sure before. Like she only met him that one night when he came to see her at her house. Maybe it was just that one time, she didn't get a good read on him. It was just this horrific thing, like, why is he different? Like, she didn't understand. But then she sees him again here, and she can really look at him and really think about it, and it's more controlled setting.
When she's being told, hang on, we're not sure about this, and it's not just her imagination this time. It might have been before, is what she might have thought of it as, rather than, she probably doesn't leap to, this is someone else.
And she basically ends the scene, she shuts the shutter, and because she can't take it anymore, she basically gets emotional and it's like, okay, this is too much, and she exits the scene. And
I thought it was really interesting that just before she does it, she's telling him to look at her. She keeps saying, "Look at me," and he doesn't until as the curtain's going down is when he kind of glances over at her for the first time.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And it's after they go outside, and Gordon takes her aside and talks to her, and she basically says it's not him, and she ultimately, as someone who doesn't understand that there's doppelgangers coming from a mysterious, mystical place, she kind of does everything she can to describe what it feels like. She says it's not just that he's older, it's not just that he's changed, or even that he's got worse. It's just not him.
Yeah, she says it's something here, and then points at her heart and says it's something that definitely isn't here.
Yeah, it's like she says it and then corrects herself. Like she realizes, no, it's not about what's there, it's about what's missing.
Yeah.
It's almost like this is like, again, to compare it to the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's almost like he doesn't have a soul. This is Cooper without the soul, mixed with Bob.
Yeah,
Bob's
you really could have made that line without the reference. You just did that for the sake of it, just because I'd be like, really?
What, vampires and Buffy that didn't have a soul? That was a thing. So as I say, and I love that Gordon tries to ask about like this last night that you spoke about in there. Is there anything I need to know? Which again to me says this is post Twin Peaks, because I never got the impression in the original show that, because I think when I was reading it the first time and I was like, oh, like did they have like a fling one night? Is that what they're getting at here?
Yeah.
But it didn't really feel like that in the original show that they had that type of relationship with Diane, and here it feels more like. But the fact that Gordon's asking about this is like, is there something I should know about here? It does sound like this was post Twin Peaks. This is a meeting that happened that she never told anyone about after he went missing.
Yeah, it does, and it really lines up with, like you said, how when they said, "Oh, he was in prison," and she said, "Good," because him just going missing, I can see her being annoyed, but not to the point where she'd be happy that he was locked up.
Exactly. So. That's kind of where I am with that, and that's basically the end of the scene. She says, "Look, we're going to have a long talk about this."
Yeah, later. And it's just the fact that she's completely broke down, she's crying, and she just starts hugging him.
Which again is against type from her, because the entire time we've known her from, and I don't mean in the original show when we heard about her just through the tape recorder, but since we've met her in this show in this season, she has been absurdly strong in the sense that she has this wall up where she's constantly swearing. Like, do you have coffee? No, I don't have any. But then 2 minutes later, she brings out coffee. Like, so she has this wall up where she's not letting anyone in. But here she completely breaks down, and it's actually quite effective because it shows just how much this Cooper meeting has gotten to her.
Yeah, and I also think it's as much as she gives Gordon and Albert shit, it's like, nah, these are the only people who can help me with this. These are the people I can trust, and that's why she finally lets the wall down. She lets a guard down and goes, right, no, I can trust Gordon here on this.
Yeah, if there's one person she trusts, it's Gordon.
Yeah.
Because he's Gordon. So there you go. And before we leave the prison, we have a little scene with Doppelkoop. He tells a guard that he wants to talk to the warden, and the guard's like, yeah, right, that's not going to happen. He's like, just tell him I need to talk about a strawberry. And of course, we heard Mr. Strawberry, previous episode. More on that in a little bit. We cut to a scene of this was the Andy scene of Andy waiting for this guy to show up, which started on a beautiful shot of the trees. Like, it was just this beautiful haunting shot with the mist coming in over the trees.
Yeah.
And of course the big thing here is the music. It was the synthy part of Laura's theme that used to play a lot in the original show, which made me grin from ear to ear. Do you know the thing is, obviously they've showed a lot of restraint with the music in this new season.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm actually, at first, I kind of want the music to be here. But they've shown so much restraint that every time they have used it, it's really hit hard.
Yeah, it's when they use it, it tells you this is an important moment. Like, because they don't use it just for the sake of, like, I think that was maybe one of the very fair criticisms you could have with the original show, is it overused this music.
Oh, it did, yeah, it absolutely overused music, yeah.
Whereas here, it's very, very calculated when it uses it. So whenever it does, I'm immediately alert.
I think it's also very interesting that at Laura's theme, one of the old themes, has only ever played inside the town itself. Both times we've heard it, it was in Twin Peaks, it was in the station and here with Andy. And obviously when it's just the synth version, it's not got the sad piano bit, it's very mysterious, it's very much, there's this stuff going on, and of course the guy doesn't show, and we do in the middle of the scene cut back to this guy's house where he was being interviewed earlier, and the door's just kind of half open, implying that something bad's probably happened to him.
Yeah.
which is why I kind of wrote off when you said earlier, oh, maybe he's not showing up because he's worried about the owls. I kind of wrote that off because no, I think something bad's happened to him.
I agree. I just like the idea that maybe he wouldn't have, because it's like, nah, there's owls up there too.
Especially since I'm pretty sure there's a bit of a hum, a bit of an electrical hum as we're looking at the door.
Okay. I didn't catch that, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah, I think I heard it. Admittedly, maybe I'm just being paranoid and I'm looking for it now, but I'm pretty sure I heard it. And Andy's up there waiting, and of course he's left until he eventually decides to give up and leaves.
He's a very patient man, because it's good, like, what, 5:10 or something?
I didn't catch it.
It's been a while. It was definitely, because I was like, 4:30 was obviously the meeting time. It was a good bit after that. He'd really waited in hopes that maybe the guy's just running late.
Yeah. Andy's like that, though. Andy's not the sort of guy.
Yeah, it's true.
But nah. Really good. And even before that, I think when Cooper was being taken back to his cell, there was a little bit of music. It was new music. It wasn't some of the old stuff. But again, it's just the idea that they're using music a little bit more as we were going through things here.
Yeah.
And they're introducing it back out of the show. Obviously, last week had a lot of great music in it as well. So no, good stuff. So then we cut back to the prison. We cut back to the Doppelkoop and the warden. And it's basically, the scene basically amounts to Doppelkoop saying, yeah, I know about this Mr. Strawberry thing. You don't know, you don't want anyone to know about this Mr. Strawberry thing, so let me out. Obviously there's some details that I want to mention, but that was the gist of the scene.
You're saying it that simply, but I love the speech that he gave about it, you know, the one about the dog legs.
Yeah, because if you remember, there was a dog leg in the car that they found the evidence in episode 1 or 2, and he's like, yeah, there was 3 other legs, and with those legs is the information about you that you don't want to get out. And if anything happens to me, or if I'm not let out of here tonight like I want to, you know.
Yeah, he says, the other 3 went out with the information you're thinking about right now to people you don't want coming around here if anything bad happens to me.
Yeah, it makes it sound like he was mixed in with some people, doesn't it? The name he uses to convince them that he knows what he's talking about is Joe McCluskey.
Yes.
And he does refer to Mr. Strawberry as the late Mr. Strawberry at the end of the scene. I think we kind of probably jumped to conclusion and said, yeah, either Mr. Strawberry's dead or Mr. Strawberry was with him when he killed someone else. I think we just kind of jumped to something dark like that. Yeah. But yeah, so very, very thing. He asked for him release, also Ray as well, who we know is in the same prison. We've not seen him since the first couple of episodes actually, but we knew he was there. That was where he was heading. Which is almost convenient, because as much as he didn't intentionally get caught,
it's kind of worked out to his benefit.
Or maybe to an extent he did. Maybe he stayed in the car and he let the police take him, knowing,
Maybe that was his ultimate plan, like not to crash into that, obviously, but the ultimate plan was to get caught by the police for something minor and get in there.
Maybe I could see it. So that's the thing. Now, honestly, at this point, we were like halfway through the episode. And at this point, I actually almost thought we weren't going to even see Cooper for an episode.
I thought that as well. Yeah.
I thought we were going to stick with everyone else. We were doing a lot more stuff in Twin Peaks with all those characters. I thought we weren't going to see Cooper. We did see Cooper. It was basically just one sort of extended scene we had with him. Really multiple scenes, but they kind of followed on from one another. Yeah. Where Janie E is waiting outside for him. And do you know what I love about Janie E? I noted this down. I love that she so often doesn't just walk somewhere, she storms somewhere.
She does, doesn't she?
Where the arms are going up and down and she's sort of like, you know, walking with purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's waiting for him outside, she's waiting to pick him up. She's pissed that he's not out yet. But basically, Cooper's co-worker, I think his name is Anthony, if I remember right, Tom Seamore's character, he's in basically like, I saw you get into the boss's office this morning with all those files. You know, he's nervous. He's trying to get questions asked and whatnot.
He's gonna go, did you rumble me? Is basically what he's asking.
Yeah, but the police show up, and Todd Packard from The Office, being one of the policemen, they're there to talk about his car. And obviously we were like, okay, the car that exploded, license plate. We've seen that last episode, and they're here to ask about this. Janie E comes out of the office though, and I love that she wins an argument with anyone, because she did it with the drug dealers, or the gamblers last episode, and this episode with the police, where she basically just barks loud enough and they back down, is essentially what happens.
Pretty much.
She calls them on every little thing they say, all their shit, and my favourite part that I've noted down, when they ask, because they're basically saying, do you know where your car is? Oh, it's missing. Was it stolen? And there's, oh, it was stolen. And they ask, why didn't you report the car was stolen? And Janie E's answer to this is, well, do you know why it wasn't reported stolen? Because there's more to the world than cars. There's cars everywhere. Everything, too many things. Like, I love that response. That Janie E's turned out to be a fantastic character. I'm loving her.
She's still got a stupid name, but she's got a stupid name.
But the way she like won't let anyone win a fight, and the way she's like a firecracker is particularly entertaining. I'm enjoying that side of it. Oh dear.
Yeah, just to go to what I was talking about at the start. Jerry was saying someone stole his car. It was here where I noticed that Cooper was very it was the word stolen that he fixated on. That was the word he repeated. And I thought it was just a not that they're directly connected, but it was a strange link here for me.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't think of that. I did think of that's multiple cars being stolen.
Yeah. It was just the way he fixated on stolen. And obviously, with Jerry, we never really saw anything. He was just like, "My car's been stolen. I don't know where I am." And I'm almost wondering if some of Cooper's mind is kind of over with Jerry.
Do you know what? I can kind of see it, yeah. Like, or maybe just like Jerry's somehow tapped into the cosmos and he's like picking up some of his thoughts.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. It's like, because he doesn't know where he is. Because Cooper or Dougie Cooper is in Vegas. It's like, what's going on? Like, he's not saying I don't know where I am. I'm in a forest. He's going, I don't understand what's happening there.
I can see it. But yeah, it also repeats the word police. He recognises that word.
Yeah.
Again, tying into what we said the last couple of episodes, where he's recognising keywords that kind of relate to
that was why job. Stolen stood out a little bit more to me, because that one, yeah, okay, that's part of police job, stolen items, but it was not quite what we saw Cooper deal with. Also,
badge.
Yes.
So yeah. Also, I just one note before we go to the next part of this, the next sort of scene that connects to this. One of the cops cracks a joke about how it'll be easy to get the insurance because they work at an insurance company, and the cop at the back who hadn't said anything the entire scene just had this ridiculous. Basically, him and Heidi from the Double R Diner should probably go on a date because they probably love each other.
Yeah. But at least this one, the guy was laughing at an actual joke and not anything that ever.
Sure. It was a bad joke.
It was a bad joke. It was a sort of bad joke I can appreciate.
Yeah, okay. And then Ike the Spike made his move.
Yeah. My description here is just spike attack.
Spike attack. But of course he broke his ice pick, so he had to just go with some more conventional means with a gun.
Yeah.
But of course,
I felt like he might have been more successful with his ice pick.
He might have been, but I don't know because I think Cooper springs to action. That's what I've written down. I've written down Cooper springs to action! ! Basically, his FBI training kicks in and he takes care of business.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how this plays like muscle memory, but these particular muscles don't have that memory. Because this Dougie body has never done that.
Oh, no, it's not Dougie's body. It's his body.
Yeah, I suppose.
Hence why they're all like, oh, you've lost weight and you've cut your hair. It's Cooper's body.
Yeah, you're right. Just mixing it up a bit there.
But yeah, even just down at the point that he pushes Janie out the way first.
Yeah. Get the civilians out of the way.
Yeah, like, just everything about it. Like it was just he's spraying into action. I thought it was really well shot as well. Because as much as Lynch is very much like a still shot, hang back, let things play out, slow paced. Like slow pacing. We'll get to that later in the bar. But once it actually cut into the action, and it was like quick cuts, so it was very well kind of paced.
Yeah.
Felt very frantic, yeah, kinetic almost. I'd almost.
Yeah, there was definitely there was a sense of motion.
Yeah, interesting. So after this happens, obviously the arm appears out of the. And when I say the arm, I mean the arm from the red room, not not just an arm. The arm appears in the ground and says, "Squeeze his hand off." Yeah,
was interesting. Very dark.
Which he does. I mean. It depends if you take it literally, like he actually wants him to squeeze his hand off of his arm. I don't know if that's maybe what he was saying, or if he was just saying, "Now squeeze his hand so that it'll."
I think that was the point. It was essentially going get the gun off.
Well, it's interesting though when you see the police like they're picking up this flesh off the gun, Like,
Yeah.
and I had this weird light effect on it where it kind of like it highlighted that and like made the rest of it like a shadow.
Mm.
I just interesting effect that I noticed. But yeah, the police and news all show up and they're asking questions. We see Janie talking to the police and explaining what happened. And it cuts to like vox pops from the news with just various onlookers and bystanders talking about it. And I just wanted to point out this quote. I've got something more important to say, but I really like this quote from one of the bystanders. Douglas Jones, he moves like a cobra.
Yeah.
Douglas Jones, he moves like a cobra. I like that line.
That's if you had to have a sentence to to go above your office, you go, right, this is me. That's the one you want.
Yep, nah, I see. But of course, is this on the news? Is Cooper going to be? Is his face going to be on the news? Because
do you know the one I found most interesting out of all those little bits? It's the one from the child, the young girl who said he smelled funny. I just thought that was a bit more interesting, where it was everyone else is just going, oh yeah, he was doing all this stuff, but the child had a different perspective entirely.
Was she talking about him though, or was she talking about Spike?
I wasn't sure. It was a bit unclear when they were asking. She just said he smelled funny. So I wasn't sure if she was going, she can almost smell something different about Cooper.
Or maybe she could smell the arm, perhaps?
Yeah. I wasn't sure, but I thought it was an interesting line.
That's fair. I mean, it could end up being the most important thing of all. We then cut to the Great Northern. We actually had the classic shot outside with the waterfall, the establisher shot, which we've not really had. I think we had it in episode 1 when we first seen them, but and we had this there's a sort of hum noise, not quite the electrical hum of
it's much higher pitched. It's almost a ringing instead of just a hum.
Yeah. But we start off with this slow shot, just kind of going around the. It starts off in the concierge, and it sort of pans around into what I think is Beverly's office, where she does her job, and Ben's there, and they're sort of standing there listening, and it basically is like, oh yeah, so how long have you heard this hum? And they're like, oh, let's try and things here. Obviously, there's a main thing we want to talk about. I do want to point out though that we've got a strange hum, which the way the scene ends implies to me that it's coming from the walls.
Yeah, because at first it was like they're like, is it coming from the lamp? Oh, I mean, they don't know. They don't say the lamp specifically, but they go over by the lamp.
Yeah, that corner, yeah.
And then they go over by like the totem pole. I think it was like a little totem pole thing in the other corner.
Yeah, they have some sort of like art stuff in there. It's like a Native American decor.
And it feels like every time they move over, it's like, oh no, it's not quite here. We were wrong.
Which, by the way, to do with Hawk's heritage, I don't know if it's still relevant anymore, but just in case.
Yeah, it could be relevant.
I don't know. Unless I'm completely recognising that as Native American symbolism. I could be wrong.
Could be.
But, no, so listen for this. I thought it was interesting, the way it ended in the wood, because my mind immediately went to Josie, who's stuck in the knob, the handle and the drawers.
I'd kind of forgotten about that because it was so stupid.
Which were wood. It probably has nothing to do with that, but my mind jumped to that.
It was interesting because until this final shot, I actually thought that it was coming from the key.
Aye, well, there you go. That leads us nicely to the key, because I love how the scenes focus on this just mundane thing. I mean, it's a little bit mysterious, because obviously Twin Peaks plays with noise a lot and various things like that, but yeah, it was just this very slow-paced, mundane thing between these two. The sexual tension is through the roof.
Yep.
And I mean, congratulations to Ben that he still got it, even at this very old age.
Yeah.
Because in the original show, he was already like an older middle-aged man, but he's at that age where like a lot of men about that age like kind of attract a lot of younger ladies. Whereas now he's like, no, he's he looks like he's a walker now. He's at that kind of age, so it's a bit strange in that sense. But he's he's a bit of a playboy. But yeah, there's this sexual tension to it, the whole thing. But just in the middle of this scene, so it's doing this mundane thing, and then she's like, "Oh, this might be interesting," and she picks up the key, and I'm like, "Oh, the key! Oh." And right away he's like, "Oh, this is an old one. Could we switch to cards a long time ago?" And he's like, "Wait a minute, I think I know what room this was." And he's like, "That was the room where Cooper was shot." And Beverly basically asks, "Oh, Cooper, FBI? Who's Laura Palmer? Well, she's just asking all these questions. He's like, that my dear, is a long story. And then again, we get back to the tension, and she's like clearly kind of sticking around when she doesn't need to be. He's like, oh, it's
he's like, you can go home now, and she's just like, yep.
Interesting that she's leading him on seemingly, and he's kind of
plays with the idea that Ben has reformed
a little bit, which we kind of had in the original show as well. By the end of it, but I think. I mean, he's not being rude to her, he's not being dismissive, he's still being pleasant, he's still, no, call me Ben, don't call me Mr. Horne, kind of thing, and all the rest of it. But certainly she's the one who's staying here, and we actually get more of her, because we follow her to the next scene. We go to her house, she comes home, and there's a carer who's taking after her husband, and maybe this is part of it, maybe Ben isn't that reformed, but he just feels guilty that maybe he knows that her husband's sick. Seemingly with cancer or something like that, because he's hooked up to the respirator and all the rest of it. And this scene's her husband's name's Tom, and there's tension in this scene, not sexual tension, very much the opposite. It's tension because Tom seems to kind of knows that she's avoiding coming home.
Yeah.
And he pulls her up on it. He's like, oh, you stayed late because you had stuff to do? What stuff did you have to do? And she keeps trying to deflect it with, oh, you hungry? I'll make you something to eat. She keeps trying to like bury it and not talk about it, and when he keeps pushing, she just gets angry, and I assume she's getting angry herself out of guilt, like because the thought of facing it and actually admitting it is as a guilty thing,
and probably stress. She there's probably some level of her that's struggling with this situation.
Yeah,
and she's not quite sure how to deal with all of this. Maybe it's a relatively recent development, like in the past year or whatever.
Yeah.
And the relationship's just fractured because of it.
I imagine so. And I wonder, maybe I'm reading into this too much, but I wonder if, like, feeling like she's more free at the Great Northern's kind of, like, almost like a sort of small version of Cooper in a way, where he came to Twin Peaks and he came to the Great Northern, and it was like a new lease in life for him from these previous happenings.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading into that too much, but certainly, no, it was interesting to actually follow, because we saw her in one scene in the opening episode, and then that's been it since. So it was nice to actually get a bit of her character, and we know what her deal is now. And even though Jerry cracked a joke about sleeping with her with Ben, we now know that, oh no, she actually seems to be interested in that, even if she shouldn't be, kind of thing.
Yeah. And again, to go back to my thing about Jerry being connected to Cooper, he had an eye for those things. Cooper did.
He did. That's a good point.
I know at the time we dismissed it as Jerry just being Jerry and his usual jokey self, but I don't know now. Just put it out there.
It still reads that way, but yeah, no.
It does, but I'm just there's an extra potential.
If this pans out, I can see what you're saying. So then we cut to the Roadhouse, and it was very much a fake out again, where we think, oh, is it the end of the episode? What's going on? And we go in the actual bar though. There's no one there. Like they're cleaning up after the night's over. There's no one on stage. And this shot went on so long. It's basically just a shot. We have the Renault behind the bar, who's just doing paperwork or whatever.
Yeah, it's just there.
And there's the employees just sweeping up on the floor. It's lots of nuts, I think, by the looks of it.
This went on so long, I was just expecting the credits to come up on
So
screen.
did I. I was expecting the titles to start appearing. I was expecting starring Kel MacLachlan to just appear at some point.
Yeah.
And it kept going. And I actually laughed. I started laughing because it was going on so long that, Lynch, you troll, you magnificent bastard. Because I'm just so
you
intently...
realise it gets to the point where it's going on so long where it's like, okay, it can't be it. And then you're like, but is it? Is the credits going to come up any second now? Just because he got us.
Yeah, and it goes on so long, to the point that on my second viewing, I legitimately just skipped ahead by like 2 minutes, and it was still going. It lasted over 2 minutes. But do I like about it though? I like that because eventually what breaks the monotony of it is the phone. The phone rings, and I kind of like the idea that we cut to a scene where the whole point of the scene is the phone call, but the phone doesn't ring for 2 minutes into the scene.
Yeah, it's because you always cut right as the phone rings, or it rings straight away, like pretty close, 20 seconds maybe at most.
It's almost like it's playing with the idea that the editor doesn't know when the phone's going to ring, but he just knows we have to be at the scene at that for the phone ringing, which is, I know, sounds silly, but I kind of like it in a weird way. Now, admittedly, it probably does go on a bit too long, but the same way, I'm waiting for something to happen, or I'm waiting for the credits to roll the whole time.
That's it. I think it works the once. You can't pull that too often.
Oh,
but
yeah,
just
yeah,
the once where you go, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. And then just nothing happens. It just works every so often just to subvert those expectations.
I don't think I've ever intently stared at someone sweeping a floor, though. Quite the same way I was
No,
here,
no.
waiting for the thing to
You're
happen.
just watching it going, right, okay, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Something must happen.
But eventually it's a phone call, and we learn some stuff here. We learn that I think Jean Michael or Michael, or maybe it was Mitchell. I'm not sure about my writing here. That was my thing. Not my memories, but it's my writing here. I think that was his name. I think that's what he said. But basically, we find out that the whole practice of sending girls to a whorehouse, possibly still one-eyed Jacks, but that's unconfirmed. It might not be. That is still a thing. Because basically, he's arguing with someone. He keeps saying he owes me for 2. Who's he? Hard to say. It could be Red. That maybe seems like a likely possibility.
Yeah.
But we have no way of knowing that at this moment in time. But what we do know is that he sent 2 girls, and they turned out to be 15.
Yes.
And whoever's on the other end of the phone is complaining about this, saying, because he's like, they had good ideas, it's not my problem. And he mentions, the Renaults have owned this place for forever.
57 years.
There you go, 57 years. And we're not losing it over this, so deal with it, basically. And he's a total sleazeball, because he says something about them being grade A students, and then a few lines later he says, and I heard there were grade A whores as well.
Yeah.
He's a total complete sleazeball, which, to be fair, is very reminiscent of Jacques Renault.
I think that's just a Renault family trait.
I think it might be. But again, it sets up these ideas that this is still happening. Because we've not heard about this since the new season started, that this was going on.
No, we haven't. It's interesting that it's shifted over to the bar now.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does make me curious, though. It makes me think there's going to be another murder.
Do you think?
I think there's going to be a murder in Twin Peaks.
I mean, they did say it's happening again, and
they did say that.
Why not a murder?
I think this sets up that the victim will probably be someone. If it's not one of these 2 girls that he's talking about, then it'll be someone who's also went through this process.
Do you think there'll be a spiritual successor to Laura in the sense that
I think so.
They went through a similar journey of this?
Yeah, I could see it. It wouldn't surprise me if Lynch ends up pulling a fast one, and it turns out one of the characters that we know from the original show is a doppelganger.
Okay.
And kills someone. I don't know.
Interesting.
But I feel like maybe it'll be not even nothing to do with the lodge, perhaps. But I can see there'll be a murder soon in Twin Peaks. I feel it in my veins.
We'll see how long we're gonna wait for that then.
And I have another piece of evidence to support it, but I'll get there when I get there.
Okay. Well, it can't be that long. There's not much left of the episode.
That's fair. But yeah, so that was that was all my notes. I actually wrote down total sleazeball. That was my summary of his attitude. So we cut back to the prison, and we see Doppelkoop get out, get the car. He's with Ray. Ray's out as well. My only real note about this is I really like the shot when he's coming out the cell, because it was the long the prison hallway, and there's a guard at the end with a flashlight, and it's just the bright light of this light, and it's sort of the beam of it coming down the hall just looked really good.
It's really nice because he just stands there, and then the door slides open, and then he steps out.
It's almost like this would be creepy for anyone else, but Doppelkoop, of course, is the creepy one, so he isn't scared by the other things, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. I say kind of thing a lot. I've just noticed that.
You do, don't you?
I do. I know I've noticed that it's going to annoy me.
And now you've just pointed out to everyone else, so they're all going to notice it, and it's going to annoy everyone now.
No.
You bastard.
Okay. So, but that was basically that. They let him out, and they go in their the beige rental, I believe. I think that's important, but
it probably isn't. But you just never know, do you?
But do recall that Cooper did ask for a friend in the glove box, which I am assuming is a gun.
That was the impression I got too.
And because we know he wants to kill Ray, because Ray was trying to kill him, but Ray doesn't know that he knows that he was trying to kill him.
Yeah.
So Ray's not long for this world.
No, unless Cooper has a use for him, which is possible. He might be going, right, things have gone off plan. You get to stay alive for a little bit longer because I need you to do something. Yeah,
so next up, we had a single shot of another very good eerie shot of the trees. It was just a sort of bird's eye view, just sort of gliding through the trees, with some sinister sort of howling and wind kind of thing. And then we cut to the final location of the episode, which is the Double R Diner. And before we get to the credits, where again, much like the bar where we just had the crowd of people going about whatever they were doing, again it was here. There was a song on the jukebox, the credits played over it, and of course the episode was dedicated to the actor who played Doc Hayward. Obvious episode to dedicate to him because he appeared in it. But before that happens, though, someone runs in the front door and shouts, "Has anyone seen Bing?" Which is funny because the first time I watched it, I didn't hear Bing. I heard Millie for some reason, but it says Bing, and I'm wondering if that's a murder victim, and that's like just to support my idea.
You think it's just happened? I
think it's just happened, and he's looking for Bing. Who, first of all, whoever named their kid Bing has already killed them in a small way.
I mean, I would hope it was a nickname.
Possibly.
I'd pray it was.
It may be a nickname. No, you're right. But the way he ran out and said, "Where's Bing? Has anyone seen Bing?" And then he runs out, kind of frantic.
Yeah.
And everyone's just kind of like, that was kind of weird. You know, see Shelley, she's kind of like, oh.
Everyone's like, no, not here.
And we see Norma, you know, doing the books like she was doing last time. Every time I've seen her so far this season, she's been sitting doing numbers.
She's a very studious woman.
Heidi's kicking around, but yeah, it was the end on the diner. That's the end of the episode. Any other thoughts?
No, I really enjoyed it. I think it feels a lot more like a normal episode of Twin Peaks in the fact that, you know, we had all these follow-on scenes.
Yeah.
Things kind of made sense.
It felt closer. It feels like plot things definitely advance more in this episode. As opposed to, like, because, you know, the way that, like, oh, right, well, we should go and get her. And then we skipped an episode, and then we get one scene of him seeing Diane, and then it was this episode where we finally had proper conversation with her. But then it kept going.
All that stuff actually kind of came about in this episode.
Yeah, we actually kept going with her, and we got her seeing Cooper, and we got all that stuff playing out. Much like at the start of the episode, the sheriff's like, oh, I need to phone Harry and see what he thinks. I was almost expecting not to see that until the next episode, but no, it was the very next scene.
Yeah, it feels really strange to just have these, like I said, we have follow-on scenes where questions are answered in the same episode.
I think to me, it shows that as much as Lynch does like drawing things out, he likes to have the slow pace and all the rest of it. It does show to me that he doesn't just do it for the sake of it. If there's no reason to do it, he won't just do it.
Yeah, he knows when to get on with things. When it's time to, when something needs to happen, it's time to do it. So let's do it.
Yeah. So, no, I enjoyed this episode a lot. Yeah,
I think we have a new longest talk about an episode with this one.
Not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite. No. Episode 4 or 5, whatever one it was, hit 79 minutes. We're not hit that yet.
Not quite.
We're wrapping up, so we're not hitting that.
No.
So, but that is us. That is episode 7 of Twin Peaks. So, thoughts, theories, let us know what you thought of it, of course, in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps us out a lot. You can also help us out, of course, by going over to patreon.com/MildfuzzTV. If you want to support the channel, see some of the bonuses that are over there, that'd be cool. Otherwise, get us on Twitter at @mild_fuzz for channel updates. Individual Twitters are on the screen. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching. We'll see you next time. Have you got any vanilla?